The leaves are just starting to fall here in the Pacific Northwest, but as a backyard chicken educator, I'm already starting to think about the winter because that's when I get the most questions from people. I mean, I get a lot of messages in the winter from people who have found themselves in predicaments because there were things that, they just didn't anticipate. So what I decided to do this year is just compile a list of the things that I do in the fall that make winter easier for me, and I'm going to show them to you. Hey guys, welcome to Chickenlandia. I am a backyard chicken educator here in the Pacific Northwest, but you can call me the president of Chickenlandia. I got some tea today, but I don't have any tea to spill. I'm sorry. I confess I am not a winter person. I have no idea how anybody deals with winter. My husband's Canadian. He's just like, oh, I love it. And my kids are like, we love the snow, yay. There's really only 2 weeks of snow, at the most where I live. And I know some of you are probably laughing right now because where you live, there might be months of snow and below freezing temperatures. I think it's important for you to do some things before everything turns into a frozen wasteland. And when it's super cold like that, the last thing you want to deal with is chicken problems, when everything's frozen. Yesterday, my friend Julie came over and her kiddo Annika came over and they helped to clean my coop. And that is the first thing I want you to do is do a deep cleaning of your coop. The winter when everything's frozen is not the time when you want to do a really deep cleaning. Especially if you're doing deep litter, if you haven't cleaned out the shavings this year, you need to clean out all the shavings and replace them with fresh shavings. You can wipe down your walls. You can clean your roosts. Maybe you can use a water and white vinegar solution if you want to. Clean out your nesting boxes. I'm telling you, you will not regret it because once you get into winter, you're not gonna wanna be out here doing a deep clean on your coop. You really don't want to go into the winter with a flock that isn't as healthy as it could be. So right now is a really good time to evaluate your practices. Make sure that your chickens are getting the proper nutrition. They need to be on an appropriate chicken feed for their stage of life. They need to have oyster shell or some other kind of calcium supplement on offer at all times. And they need to have access to grit if they are not able to find it in their natural environment. If you were to look on every inch of every chicken that you have in your flock's body, and if you were to look inside each of their bodies, you would likely find a parasitic presence in your flock. It is normal for there to be some level of parasitic presence in a flock. What is not normal is when there is an infestation. So it's important to keep that parasite load down to have a healthy flock. And you don't want to go into the winter with a problem with parasites because in the winter they are more vulnerable to disease. And a chicken that is already compromised by internal or external parasites is more likely to get sick, and chickens that are sick are more likely to get infested with parasites. It's just one of those things that happens. So hopefully throughout the spring and summer, you've already been checking your chickens periodically for external parasites, and your chickens have had areas in their natural environment where they can take a dust bath, because that's how they keep the external parasite load down. Is they get into the dirt, they roll around in the dry dirt, and that's how they take a bath, and that's how they rid their body of parasites. If you have not been checking your chickens for external parasites, you really should do that right now before we get into the winter, okay? Just, get each of your chickens. You can go into your chicken coop at night. You can pluck them off the roost. It's a lot easier to do it that way. Now, I'm not saying that if you do find 1 or 2 external parasites on your chickens or 1 or 2 worms in your chicken's poop, that's is not a reason to treat your flock. You should treat your flock if you find parasites, okay? But it's not a reason for panic. because, like I said, some level of parasitic presence is normal for a flock of birds. And I do have a whole video about treating your chickens for external parasites, and I will link that in the description. Now, one thing I want you to do, regardless of whether or not you find external parasites on your chickens, is to make sure that they have a place to dust bathe during the months where they may not be able to find a place to dust bathe in their natural environment. It is super easy to make a dust bath for your chickens. At the very least, all you need to have is dirt or sand, really. But I do have a special recipe where you can put some extra things in the dust bath to just take it to that next level of parasite prevention, and I'll link that in the description. But you want to make sure that you create those spaces for them now before we get into the winter. Fall is also a time when chickens are very susceptible to internal parasites. If you have observed worms in their droppings, you definitely want to get them on a program so that you can deal with that before we go into the winter. Now, a lot of you know that my flock was just dealing with a pretty intense case of coccidiosis. The first thing I did when I realized I was probably dealing with something like coccidiosis is I took a fecal sample to my vet and they tested it and they told me exactly what I was dealing with, which I would really encourage you to do if you can. Get a proper diagnosis, because internal parasites have different treatments. It's not all the same treatment. And I know that's not possible for everybody to take, to have a vet that they can work with. So I treated my sick chickens with medication, and for my whole flock, I treated them herbally. And now I have them on a weekly and monthly herbal program through Molly's Herbals, which is a company I really like. I'm not sponsored by them, but I love their products. And they have 2 herbal formulas that I use to keep the internal parasite load down in my flock. Now, I am somebody that really doesn't like to medicate my chickens preemptively, even herbally. I don't really love that. But because I have my chickens in an enclosed run, they are more susceptible to internal parasites. So if you have your chickens in an enclosed run, I really would consider, especially in the fall, if you don't do it any other time of the year, in the fall is a good time to have them on an herbal parasitic prevention program. I would do this even if I haven't found any parasites. It's just something that will not only be good for them if they have something going on, but it can also just boost their general immunity, which is a good thing. At my old property, I was in a much smaller space, and I had them on Molly's Herbals on a preventative program. And when we moved here, I just fell off of doing the program because I was busy, because I was writing a book, because I had, all this stuff going on, blah, blah, blah. And guess what? My chickens got sick. So, hindsight's 2020. Even if you don't want to do like an anti-parasite program, you can do just some immune boosting herbs. I've talked about these before: oregano, thyme, garlic, which is actually a vegetable, not an herb. And I will put that into their feed, or I'll put it into some scrambled eggs and give it to my chickens. And it's a great way to kind of boost your flock's immunity. And you can do that all the time, but if you're only going to do it for part of the year, do it in the fall and in the winter, and that will help to just kind of support them through a time when they're more susceptible to illness. There's literally dragonflies having in the camera. Do that somewhere else. Get a hotel. During the spring and summer, I have salad bars that I have set up for my chickens, and they can go and they can get their greens that way. Of course, I have grass in my chicken yard by some miracle of God. I have grass. People ask me about it all the time. I don't know how it happened, okay? But somehow I have grass in my chicken yard. It's probably because all my chickens are like really little, or most of them are really little, and they just aren't that destructive. But anyway, in the winter, obviously, if you have salad bars, they might not grow because you might be in an area where everything goes dormant in the winter, or there's snow on the ground or whatever, and they're not going to have access to those fresh greens. And I think that's a really important part of your chicken's diet. So I would come up with a plan right now to get some fresh greens into your chickens over the months where they can't find it in their, in their salad bars or in their natural environment. That really doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, you can give your chickens, scraps, kitchen scraps. I also use these little pouches. They're called pet greens, and you can grow them inside. They're from a company that I love working with. They're called Small Pet Select, and they have these little pouches. You put water into the pouch, and then the sprouts grow up. You can actually take scissors and just cut the greens off the top, and the greens will keep growing. And these are just great, especially for small flocks. You can grow them over the winter, and your chickens can have access to greens when they just can't find that outside in their environment. Plus, it's super fun, and kids love to grow them. So I can't say enough good things about this product. I really like it. One thing that is terrible for chickens all year round, but definitely in the winter, is for them to become bored. And that usually happens when they don't have enough space or they don't have enough enrichment in the space that they have. So right now is the time to get ahead of that. And if you want to learn ways that you can enrich your chickens so they don't get bored and become susceptible to disease, parasites, and all kinds of bad habits that chickens will get into when they get bored, you can click right here. It's 100% friendly Backyard Chickens education and entertainment, and I know you're gonna love it.